See, British and Irish Folk Volume 4. Well, I don't want to bite off more than I can chew, so what I'll do is that I had intended showing my David Graham stuff, but what I might do is put that into Volume 5 along with, I'm not quite sure if he's Easy Bedfellows with Fairport Convention, but I want to show my Fairport Convention stuff along with Sandy Denny's work on in Fotheringay. There was 2 albums, of which that is one, and also her solo work before her untimely death. But what I'll do is I'll do that in the next video. So in this one I'd like to concentrate on 2 of the leviathans of the British and Irish folk scene from the 1970s and 1960s, and they are the jocular Hamish Imlach, who I featured in a very early video of mine, and I have some of his work, but principally these 2 pieces. And I also want to focus on Dick Gaughan. Now, he is one of my favourite of all the British and Irish folksters. Just a phenomenal guitarist and a phenomenal singer and an incredible live performer as well. I had the pleasure of seeing him twice live last year. He's an absolutely magnificent artist. Okay, so I suppose I'll start with him. So it's very difficult when you think of Scottish folk to think outside of the binary Hamish Imlach and Dick Gaughan. So we'll start with Dick Gaughan. He was originally in a Scottish-Irish group called Boys of the Loch, and after leaving them, he issued this particular release, which is called No More Forever, with one of the former members of Boys of the Loch, called Ali Bain, who's a fiddler. What I love about folk albums, or one of the things I love about folk albums, is the way that they go through the provenance of all the tracks, and they give you detailed notes and marginalia about the provenance of the songs and where they were originally collected, and etc. I really love that about folk works in particular. This is an absolutely phenomenal album, one of his very best, and this is released on the Trailer label. And there was 2 releases of this in the year of issue. One of them had the very familiar Trailer label, you know, with its monogram, its distinctive monogram, but this one also came out in the year of issue, which is just a kind of a blood red, crimson red label design. This is an absolutely phenomenal piece of work. It's mostly Scottish songs, and in this album he doesn't show his cards too much. You know, he's famous for his political and his social commentary songs. He's very much a socialist, but this is just a collection of Scottish tunes, some ancient tracks here, the Bonnie Banks of Fordee, Jocko Hazeldean, the Fair Flower of Northumberland, and especially the Green Linnet, which is a track that I really love. So it's an absolutely phenomenal album. He's a highly accomplished guitarist as well. So I strongly recommend that particular album to anyone that's interested in delving into his oeuvre. And this is a short snippet of one of the tracks.
By my penknife, down by the bonny banks of Fordee, oh, it's I'll no be a robber's wife, not I will die by your penknife, but I will die by your penknife, down by the bonny banks of Fordee.
Okay, another one of his albums that I would recommend, but this is a kind of a cautious recommendation because it's quite dark, and this is the self-titled album Gaughan, which he released in the early 1970s, about 1973 I imagine. And this one particularly endears itself to me because of the track Willie O Winsbury, which is possibly my favourite folk song of all time. It's an ancient song that dates back 200 years and more, and there have been a few famous performances of that track. It first came to prominence on Sweeney's Men, which is the Irish, celebrated Irish folk group featuring Johnny Moynihan, Joe Dolan, and of course Andy Irvine. And Andy Irvine actually came across the track Willie O Winsbury. He came across the lyrics first of all, and there's a famous story as to when he adapted it to music, he selected the wrong musical accompaniment, but they found out subsequently that it suited the song so much that they left it as it was. This is an extremely sought after album by Sweeney's Men, so I'm very lucky to have a copy of that. But that's when that song was first recorded, even though the lyrics of it date back to the 17th century, I think. But there's also a very famous rendition of it on John Renburn's album Pharaoh Annie, so that's well worth hearing as well. It was also recorded by Richard Thompson, I believe, recorded it too, as indeed did Jackie McShee's Pentangle, as a nice version of it on this album, Solomon's Seal, again, which opens side 2, just like the version on Pharaoh Annie. It also opens side 2. But my favourite version of it, I think it's either Andy Irvine's version with Sweeney's Men or indeed Dick Gaughan's version. Dick Gaughan's version is particularly beautiful. It really showcases his intricate guitar work to great effect. Also on this album is some brilliant tracks such as My Donald, which is a song about a whaler. I don't know what the proper term is, but for the folks that hunt whales. And also the opening 2 tracks, Bonnie Janie O Bethelny and Bonnie Lass Among the Heather, which are really just gorgeous pieces of work. So this is a lovely album. There are some dullish moments. There's a number of socio-political songs such as Crooked Jack, The Recruited Collier and The Pound a Week Rise, which don't really sit too well with me. But when I go to this album, I go to it for Willie O' the Winsbury and Gilly Moore, etc. So that's actually okay.
Oh, the Winsbury, as when I trusted be, and before that I do eat or drink, and I hang it he will be.
Definitely a high point in his career is the album that immediately followed it, which is called Handful of Earth, which is just an absolutely phenomenal piece of work. In this one here, he's looking quite like Roger Waters, I think, there with his hairstyle and his stance. And here he is standing in front of a cement factory in a wheat field, and these tracks are basically a collection of socialist ballads and that sit cheek by jowl along with some beautiful Irish songs like Éireann go Bragh, Song for Ireland, and that's it. I think there's only Craigie Hill as well. Craigie Hill is a beautiful unaccompanied song. He sings it solo. It's just really nice. But most famous on this particular album is Now Westling Winds, which is just an absolutely stunning piece of work. It's a beautiful poem written by Robert Burns, the famed Scottish poet, set to music and adapted by Dick Gaughan. He didn't pen the actual tune in itself, but he learned it from a guy called Geordie Hamilton, as the copious notes tell me here. But a really beautiful piece of work. I saw him perform it live twice last year when he did his Irish tour, and he performs it a lot slower now than this recorded version would have us know. Just really beautiful. Also, this one is Both Sides of the Tweed, which is a ballad of reconciliation between Scotland and England, two mortal enemies. And The Snows That Melt the Soonest is a magnificent folk track. And World Turned Upside Down was also covered by, even though he didn't pen that track, but it was covered by Billy Bragg on his debut, which is very much a socialist epic. So there isn't one dull moment in this particular album. It was released on Topic, and it is one of the most magnificent folk albums ever. So I don't really know where I stand in relation to the debate between this particular album or his debut, but I would recommend both of them thoroughly for anyone that has even a passing interest in folk. I think they're both necessities.
Down whistling winds and slaughtering guns bring autumn's pleasant weather. The moorcock springs on bring wings among the bloomin' heather. Now weaving green wild o'er the plain, the lights the weeny fire. The moon shines bright as I rove at night to muse upon my charmer.
The next album that was released was one that he released in combination with his socialist buddy Andy Irvine. Andy Irvine is obviously a member of Planxty and Sweeney's Men before that, but they released this album together on the Folk Freak label out of Germany in 1981, produced by, partly produced by Donal Lunny. Some great tracks in this one as well. My favourite track on this actually is an Andy Irvine number, At 21, which is sung in Andy's beautiful plaintive style. But there's a cover version of Bob Dylan's My Back Pages, which is lovely. And there's Flowers of the Forest, which is a song that celebrates, well, it doesn't celebrate, but it laments the calamitous Scottish defeat in a battle against England, at which King James died, and I think it was the last occasion at which a king actually died in battle in the British Isles. It's 500 years ago this year that event took place, and it's commemorated in that particular track, which is again an ancient ballad, maybe 400 years old, Flowers in the Forest. But there's a lovely version of it on this particular album with would you believe, an electric guitar solo in the middle of it, which is very unlike Dick Gaughan. So again, highly recommend this one. Not as good as No More Forever, and not as good as Handful of Earth, but certainly would be probably his third greatest of his albums. So yeah, Dick Gaughan, well worth checking out. A phenomenal performer. He's an absolutely massive man. He looks like he's built out of granite, hewn out of granite, and he's just an incredible, intricate guitarist that sings the most magnificent ballads. Okay, next up, before I introduce Hamish Imlach, is local singer. He's from Limerick. This is called As I Went Over Blackwater. It's the second album released by local singer Mick Hanly, who I'm going to see in 2 weeks. He's playing here in his native Limerick, and this is just a really nice album as well. There's some cast on this particular album. It basically features everyone that was in Planxty other than Christy Moore, but like Donal Lunny, Andy Irvine, Matt Malloy, Noel Hill, and Declan Sennett, who's currently the henchman for Christy Moore, also makes an appearance on this. But I've shown this album before. He's just a beautiful, honeyed voice. After this album, he actually abandoned the folk genre and moved on to kind of more of a country Western Americana kind of a sound, which is frankly horrible. But there's some great tracks in this one. Every Circumstance, which is written by the Sand Brothers from the north of Ireland, is an amazing track. But our principal interest here is the Dewy Dens of Yarrow, which is just gorgeous track. Jack Haggerty is wicked as well, and there is a Canadian ballad here for you, Bobby Gass, called The Guerriere and the Constitution. It's an old Canadian track which would maybe of familiarity to a couple of you Canadians, but I strongly recommend this particular album, As I Went Over Blackwater. The title track itself is excellent as well. And of course, Mick Hanly went on to become a member of this group, Moving Hearts, which are basically Planxty supergroup that formed after Planxty, after the second demise of Planxty. Donal Lunny, Declan Sennett, Christy Moore is on it, Davy Spillane, Keith Donald. It's folk rock. But after Christy Moore left this group, Donal Lunny succeeded as being the main man in the group, and he brought along Mick Hanly to bolster their lineup. But that's a brilliant album that I've spoken about before. Okay, on to Hamish Imlach. Well, I featured him before as well. Hamish Imlach is just one of the most jocular, rambunctious performers of all time. He taught what's his name, Billy Connolly, how to play the guitar. He tutored John Martin. He also tutored Christy Moore when Christy Moore embarked on his solo tour of England in the early 1960s before he found his way with the album Prosperous. And Hamish Imlach, born in Calcutta, raised in Brisbane, buried in Scotland, just phenomenal performer. Very earthy, corpulent guy, weighed over 20 stone, and his claim to fame was that he wanted to leave this mortal coil with every organ knackered. So, brilliant performer, famed for his interpretations of Black is the Colour of My True Love Hair and a couple of other Irish tracks like that, The Foggy Dew, etc. And indeed, The Foggy Dew features on this collective of tracks, which is a sampler on the Transatlantic label from 1973. Highly recommend it. But I did an early video on him if anyone is interested in finding out about Hamish Imlach. Okay, moving on. Finally, nOg. I want to just introduce them. They're an Irish duo, very much kind of acid, I suppose you call them acid folk in parts, but also quite progressive. This is their debut. They're a duo that were signed to the Chrysalis label in the early 1970s, and they came out with this masterpiece, which is their debut album, self-titled. It features two just incredible tracks, Time Is Like a Promise and Our Love Will Not Decay, which is just beautiful, beautiful tracks altogether. But I've seen these guys live a few times as well. Phenomenal live act. This is their second album, A Tear and a Smile. And they're famed for being the first group to ever do a cover version of a track by Nick Drake while he lived, and it features on this particular album, which is Strong in the Sun. The track in question is Free Ride.
Where the calf to die in the war, and the ewe to bear her lamb to sow. Should the field of barley fail, and the baby at your breast grow pale, our love will not mildew grow. No, where the snow to last into spring.
So the members are Sonny Condell and Leo O'Kelly, just really gorgeous players. It reminds me quite a bit of Kings of Convenience in terms of the dynamics of their voices. They're both very much tenor voices, and they sing very close harmonies. They play with like Moroccan pottery drums, lots of flutes, etc. But magnificent players. So anyone that's interested in progressive folk music, give these guys a listen to. The album I would recommend people to go to first would be their debut, which is the self-titled Tir na nOg. So I'd like to leave it there just for this particular video. For those, I'd like to thank everyone who has passed on their regards in relation to my dad. He's still very sick, and I've received some overwhelming support really from quite an amount of individuals, for which me and my family are greatly appreciative. So I'd like to thank everyone for their well wishes, and I'll see you guys soon. Take care.